I'm here today in Satte City in Saitama Prefecture, and I'm here to look at the Maria Jizō. So it's found at this Gogendo community centre. So there's a community centre, a graveyard in the background. There's a little shrine at the front, and then this line of Buddhist statues. It's a few hundred meters away from the city's police station. So, the first things we really have is this post, which tells us when the Maria Jizō was made a cultural property of the city, or an important cultural property of the city, and this modern sign which gives us some information. So we have the Maria Jizō, and it was made in 1820, and it's a Kosodate Enmei Jizo, which appears to be an image of Mary and Christ. The Jizo's shakujo has what appears to be a cross at its top, and there are some Christian images such as a fish and a snake, and the word imesu appears on the statue, which is believed to possibly be a rendering of the word iesu, which would mean Christ. So all of this points, according to the city and researchers of the statue, to it being a Kakure Kirishitan statue. That's a hidden Christian statue, a statue used in hidden Christian worship. So we're going to explore that claim a little bit. I'll apologise if traffic's loud, if wind's loud, I'm sorry. So, this is not the statue we're going to talk about, but this is a typical Jizo statue which is housed nearby. This is the shakujo. There we go. There are other Jizo statues, such as this one, and then we have some canon statues, such as this one here, and this one here. Then we have the statue we're discussing, and a line of Jizo and one canon here. So let's talk about the Maria Jizō. So first I'll show you the evidence which was given on the sign. So we'll start with the general statue. It's a figure holding a child. So the claim is this is a representation of Mary and this is a representation of Christ. Now, since Jizo is a figure who helps children to heaven, it's not unusual to find him alongside a child. As such, I would question that claim instantaneously. This is not an unusual portrayal of Jizo. You can see this type of Jizo with a child at many temples throughout Japan. So, next we have the shakujo here, and this is supposedly a cross sign. Now, it must be noted, indeed, it's different to this shakujo, but shakujo come in numerous styles, and this too is not an unusual style. Needless to say, the presence of a cross doesn't prove Christian creatorship or authorship. So if it did, we could claim that any time we see the character Ju, that 10 in Japanese, that that was created by a Christian. We can also find crosses on all manner of objects. This is a bad example, but here on the gate to the shrine we have a cross, because all a cross is two intersecting lines. So at this position there's a cross there. We could even go down to here on the ground. There is a cross in this piece of concrete. None of this suggests, we know the shrine gate isn't Christian. We can presume that that piece of concrete isn't Christian. So what I really want to say is twofold about the shakujo. So one, this sort of shakujo exists elsewhere in non-supposedly Christian statues. Two, even if we decide that this is a cross, and it could be, although there are extra things which make it potentially atypical, even if we decide that this is a cross, that's not evidence of Christian authorship. So, next claim involves the snake and the fish. So, this is the supposed fish symbol here, and this is the snake over here. Very well. There are some shapes here which certainly look like a fish and a snake, and both are Christian symbols. But we have the same problem as the cross. It's not an exclusively Christian symbol. You can see fish or snakes on other items and it does not prove Christian creatorship or Christian authorship. With this as well, there could be a hidden snake and a hidden fish, but it's left to the imagination of the beholder, really. And then we have the final piece of evidence, which is down here. It says imesu. Now, all I can find about this word imesu pertains to this site. Pertains to the argument that this is a hidden Christian statue. So there's very little I can say about that, and it's a possibility that it is indeed a reference to Jesus. So, the 4 points I've made so far, and these are just points of observation rather than points of rather than actual criticisms, is one, we have Jizo and child, which is not necessarily unusual, not necessarily pointing to a hidden reference to Mary and Christ, because Jizo is helper of children, especially miscarriage children, to heaven. Then we have the shakujo, which has a cross-like shape on the top, but cross-like shapes do not necessarily point to Christian authorship or creatorship. Then we have a hidden fish and snake, which again, they look like a fish and a snake. Whether the creator intended them to look like a fish and a snake, I am unsure. But these two symbols again are not exclusively owned by Christianity. And then we have the word imesu. So, those are my criticisms of this statue based on observation. Now, according to the sign over here, the statue was created in 1820. Now, for this to be linked to Christianity. We need there to be a practicing Christian community in this area at the time. And it's very hard to determine whether or not there was. Christianity had been banned for 206 years at the time that this statue was built. Furthermore, Christianity was never popular in the Kanto region. So, whilst in Kyushu we have evidence of communities which existed after Christianity was banned, after missionaries stopped coming to Japan, it's hard to believe that here, where there were so few Christians to begin with, that communities continued to exist. So, just to put that into perspective, I believe 71% of all Kirishitan were in Kyushu and 10% are in Tohoku. The other 20% are divided throughout all regions in Japan. Kanto has a particularly low percent of Kirishitan, although I can't remember off the top of my head the exact number. I think it's around 2%. I'll put something in the description to explain this a bit further. So the idea that that incredibly small community continued to exist for some 200 years is particularly hard to believe when this is one of the only pieces of evidence we have. Now, there were martyrdoms in a nearby town, Koga city, which is some 20 kilometers away. But that again was almost 200 years before the erection of this statue. And we know that descendants of Christians lived in this area because the authorities kept rigorous records on the descendants of Christians. But we can't presume that the descendant of a Christian is a Christian. And there's a possibility. There is. We know the religion in Kyushu at least was passed down based on family lines. It was hereditary. You could not convert into it. So there's a possibility that there was a practicing community here, but all we really have evidence of is that there were descendants of former converts here. Now, we also have to take into account that the main reaction to the banning of Christianity was apostasy, was unconverting, converting back to Buddhism, becoming non-Christian. So, you know, martyrdom figures vary radically. Maybe at most we have around 50,000 martyrs. We know that 50,000 hidden Christians there around existed in the late 19th century in the Kyushu region. So that puts the majority of converts, of which there's somewhere between 300 and 700,000, abandoned the religion. So just on this very crude statistical analysis, this very crude exploration of probabilities or likelihoods, it would be unlikely that there was a practicing community here. That's because the religion was not popular in the Kanto region. We don't have evidence other than there being descendants here that there was a practicing community, and generally people abandoned the religion rather than taking their practice into hiding. Two main criticisms of the statue, however, are going to be or really it's taken from the work of Cieslik. Now Cieslik tells us that there are no Christian relics like this. There are no the problem here is we're not at a temple, we're at a community centre, and this has been moved here, and I don't know if it was previously at a temple or not. But Cieslik tells us that hidden Christian items, statues in particular, are altarpieces. They would go on the altar of a home of Christians and would have hidden symbols on them and be used as an image of Mary or Mary and Christ. Certainly we might say that this has hidden symbols, we might even say it's an image of Mary and Christ, but this is not an altar item. This is an item which would either have been kept at the temple, and because it's been moved here I doubt it was a temple item. I imagine it was kind of like today, something which would be found on the side of a road. But according to Cieslik at least, these sorts of items have been misidentified. Simply on the basis that it is not an altar item and it is not an item created when the missionaries were here. Nakazono Shigeo makes similar arguments regarding the misidentification of graves and statues outside of the Kyushu area. And we see a lot of these. Particularly we see ones at Buddhist temples which Cieslik would reject instantaneously. He would say that Buddhist temples do not have items of hidden Christian worship, precisely because they are temples, they are not associated with the religious, the Christian religious that would be. They are Buddhist sites primarily. Why would we have a hidden Christian statue at a Buddhist site? It would either require a conspiracy that either the priest knew that there was a practicing Christian community and tolerated it and allowed the temple to be used as a place of worship, which seems unlikely, or that there was a person carving statues in the region which were secretly Christian in nature being kept at temples. So this is very unlikely. In fact, I believe Cieslik and Nakazono generally reject all statues of this nature outside of the Kyushu region. I'm open to the concept that it is Christian, but I am unconvinced by the evidence on display. So the cross, the fish, the snake do not point definitively to Christian origin. The Jizo and child does not point to Christian origin. It could just be a typical Jizo. And the word imesu is as of yet unclear. I have problems that it's both in the Kanto region and from 1820. And I guess that's the main gist of what I want to say. It's possible. We knew there were Christians in the region historically, but whether their descendants continued practicing is another question, and seems unlikely given what we know about Christians after hiding, after they went into hiding. And then I believe, so this is Showa 58, is that 1983 or 1984? This was declared a cultural site of cultural importance to the city, or a statue of cultural importance. And you know, throughout the early Showa period and through to the late Showa period, there was a lot of this discovery of Christian items in the countryside. Cieslik, Nakazono and others have all suggested that they have been misidentified. Some items are forgeries. This is not a forgery, we can safely say that. Yeah, there's very little reading online about this statue. Basically all we have, which is on the sign over there, and you can find transcriptions of the writing on this statue as well, but that doesn't particularly help us very much. So I think that's all I really wanted to say today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I guess I was probably rambling nonsensically for most of it, but this is a topic which interests me, and I hope you've been able to see a bit about this statue, learn a bit about this statue and a bit about the potential problems with claiming that it is a hidden Christian statue. Wonderful. Another thing before I go, which I should quickly say, is, and this is a Jizo, and even when we have altar items in Kyushu, they are normally of this variety of statue, a canon, usually made in China. They're usually a canon with child, smaller than this, very small statues made of porcelain. But this is a Jizo statue, which is not unusual to find in these, especially in cases where things have been misidentified, or cases where we find supposedly Christian items off in the countryside like this, but typically we would be expecting to find canon statues which are housed on altars. Sorry, I had to come back to that point. As I was saying, hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll try and make some more like it, I guess, if people are interested, and I'll leave it there for today. Thank you.